What's up, everybody? How's it going? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical once again, and it's been kind of an interesting couple of weeks because definitely, I think, between the winter months now coming upon us, at least in this hemisphere, and things getting colder, I mean, things have been warm right now. We're in fall, but as things are getting colder, events are going to start to tick up. Currently, they're actually kind of slow right now. But between that and we also have a data slate inbound, so the face of the game is going to change pretty significantly. It's been kind of a quiet week for 40k. So I figure instead of just going over lists, we don't have that much to talk about. So what we're going to do is go through some friggin' wish listing for the new data slate, which is going to be sick, I think. So I made myself a little presentation. We got a little PowerPoint. I'll talk about some of the stuff that I want to see in the updated data slate coming this month. We got some lists to talk about, so let's just frickin' dive right in. Looks like a lot of discussion in chat about things that could be changing. So I'll be interested to see if what you guys are positing lines up with the stuff that I'm going to wish list, sort of it all. But yeah, that's what I'd like to do. So let's jump on into our lists here. Go. And take a look at what we got. So this weekend, I didn't play any games, so I don't have any games to talk about. We had a couple of GTs go down. We had one big GT at South Georgia Havoc. That was a major level event, but everything else was relatively small. We saw, a bunch of 25, 30-person GTs, but nothing particularly huge. Would it be the worst if they changed nothing in the data slate? It wouldn't be terrible, but I do think, I think that we're in need of buffs more than nerfs, and maybe there's a little bit of bias in there because I play Tyranids right now, which are maybe in need of nerfs, but and I do think their win rate is a little scary, but the bottom tier of the metagame I feels like is in more dire need of an update than the top tier is being brought down. So that's what I think, but I do think that there are some changes needed. But we'll talk about all that later. First off, let's talk about some games that happened. Glasshammer GT, Big VJ, who is, big friend of the channel, takes down another event with Heretic Astartes, so that's pretty cool. This Emperor's Children list that we've been seeing doing well since LGT, continuing to blow people up. We got in HQ, one Demon Prince. No, just Mantle of Traitors, so full rerolls on that guy, essentially. Although no... yeah, so he's just rerolling his wound rolls, I guess. Yeah, and there's no hit rerolls on him. We do have a Master of Possession with Liber Hereticus for +1. Dark Apostle with Illusory Supplication. Makes sense. 4 units of 5 Noise Marines, all with Blast Masters. Love it. 10 Cultists, 5 Possessed, 1 Master of Executions with Hatred Incarnate. So more rerolls. Plus, Big Terminator Squad with Black Mark of Damnation. What a shocker. Abaddon, another shocker, as well as a frickin' Venom Crawler. All right, this is a pretty standard Emperor's Children build, I think, chat. There's not too much to talk about here. Like we've talked about before, you basically pick the... oh, that's not what I want to do. You pick the color that you want to paint your 10 Terminator brick. This time looks like we have another pink or purple here. Supreme Command with Abaddon, 2 units of 5 Possessed instead of just the 1. 10 Chaos Terminators, 4 units of 5 Noise Marines. This is 2 units of Cultists. We're going up a little bit in the world. The Demon Prince, the Master of Possession, the Dark Apostle. This is basically the same list. Good stuff. All right, Glasshammer, I see how it is. We do have Chris Radford here, 4-1 with a Space Wolves at 3rd place from this event. So a little bit more exciting to see some Space Marines that aren't just spiky boy Space Marines taking Black Marks of Damnation. We have a Space Wolf successor, so Born Heroes Whirlwind of Rage. So we're doing the sort of the Tesla melee build. So +1 to hit on the charge. Whirlwind of Rage being that exploding 6s on the charge. Then you can wombo combo that with the Space Wolves Super Doctrine in the Assault Doctrine to also get exploding 6s, and you get Tesla 6s. We have a Bike Captain with a Thunderhammer, so that Born Heroes gets around your hit penalties from Thunderhammers pretty well. Obviously, basically the same as the standard Space Wolves chapter tactic, but it means that instead of just your exploding sixes, which is normally mathematically equivalent to +1 to hit unless you have rerolls sourced, instead of that making up for a -1 or a 3+ weapon skill, and basically meaning that you should, on average, you convert all of your attacks, all of your hit rolls. It means that suddenly you start converting more hit rolls than you started with, especially with that Tesla effect active. So you should go in and be hitting about 120% of your normal damage output, which is pretty cool. The Librarian coming in with Rites of War, Murderous Hurricane, and Armor of Russ. Interestingly, no relics at all on the Chapter Master. It is a Chapter Master, just Saga of the Hunter, so he can advance and charge, which is pretty good on a bicycle. Obviously, you go 20 inches and then you charge. We see that in Christian's Vial as well in Chaos Space Marines. So we wouldn't be talking about Chaos Space Marines in this list, but we are. Murderous Hurricane, so this is the Fight Last guy. So he has Murderous Hurricane for Fight Last, and then on top of that, also Armor of Russ. Primaris Chaplain on a bike with Wise Orator. He is a Master of Sanctity with Mantra of Strength, so he's a little bit punchy, as well as Cancel of Hate for the charge buff. Yeah, so oftentimes you also see, in place of that Born Heroes, you'd see Hungry for Battle, so you get a +1 to charge. It looks like we're just going to be relying on that Primaris Chaplain with the Wise Orator, so we can use Inspiring Oratory to get that charge off for 1 CP automatically, if we need to. 2 units of Blood Claws, because they're cheap, +1 Assault Intercessor Squad. 3 units of Wolf Guard. These are just jump pack, sort of Vanguard veteran equivalents, chainswords, and lightning claws with a Thunderhammer on the Sergeant for all those guys. 3 units of Wolfen, as we've seen typically before, with mostly Thunderhammers, but we have a couple Frost Claws in there as well. 3 Cyberwolves, because you got to take the 3 Cyberwolves if you don't have other fast attack in your list. Although we've been seeing a lot of Sky Claws coming out of these Space Wolf armies because they got the buff to their special weapon points cost. In the last update, +2 Eliminator Squads, a 5 heavy weapon Longfang unit in a drop pod, so not doing the 2x5 Longfangs, we're doing the 6 Longfangs, and the other weird thing about Longfangs, in addition to the fact that they're otherwise just slightly different Devastators with a different name, is that they get 5 heavy weapons instead of 4. For some reason, I'm sure there's like some sort of bizarre fluff justification for that, but I would never understand it. But yeah, you can fit 5 heavy weapons plus a pack leader inside the 1 drop pod, but obviously that restricts you from putting anybody else in there. Moving on. Should look at squat lists. I don't know if we saw any Leagues of Votann go X1 this weekend, or at least not at high levels. I think last weekend we did. I don't know if I have any listed here, though. Yeah, I don't have any Leagues of Votann in top 5s here, chat. They'll get there. They'll get there once their full range is released, I think. They're at a pretty decent win rate, but the sample size is really low. I was looking at win rate statistics, at least through last week. Oh, I get a cat in here. Figure out how to open the door to her bedroom. Oh, what's up, girl? Come up. You want to say hi to all the people on the stream? She doesn't like it if I stream without her. No? Down there? Alright, well, I'm sure she'll bother me at some point. I was looking at win rates previously. Leagues of Votann had a good win rate, but obviously I think only, at least through last weekend, only about 30 games played at US Open. There she is. What's up? Anybody want to say hi to Inky? Inky? Say hi to all the people on the stream. What's up? What's up, stream people? Yeah, look at the camera. No? Oh, she loves to look at the camera. Look at this camera, Inky. That's my drink. You can't drink that. Well, we've got a little intermission here from a very rambunctious cat. I'm surprised you figured out how to open that door, cat. Every time I go live or record a video, she has a little bit of a conniption that I'm talking to somebody that isn't her. So She gets locked in the bedroom a lot of times. All right, that's the microphone. That's for me. All right, we're back up. Come to every 40k live stream with a camera pointing at a cat. The cats just want to be part of the live streams, all right? It's not, it's not under my control whether or not the cat's on the live stream. That's up to her. All right, Inky, you gotta go down. You gotta sit in your bed. Oh, come on, get in there. Got a little hammock right next to my desk. So out with me. She also has a tower over there, for which I keep forgetting to set up a camera. I usually have a cat camera for her when she takes a nap over there, but not today. She was deciding she's not going to knock the drink off. Yeah. So I've been painting up some models to run demos for Breachstorm. Link down in the description. Go check that game out. So I've been doing a lot of painting this past week, and anytime I'm interested in something, and she immediately wants to check it out. So she's been trying to knock my models off of my desk all week, which has been an exciting adventure. Moving on, we do have some 5-0 Chaos Knights, which is very exciting. Something a little bit different. Oh, this is Abaddon, though. And also, there's demons. No, this is mixed chaos. What are you talking about, Chaos Knights here? These players misrepresenting their super faction. The worst. Yeah, just a bunch of Chaos Knights. House Harper track, so we get the extra wounds and the damage ignore roll. And it's a bunch of War Dogs to give objective secured, to hide Abaddon, and then one unit of Flamers and some Plague Bearers. Yeah, I think the Demons detachment makes a ton of sense because it gives... Demons are pretty good at performing actions because they have a high base speed on infantry. So just having Plague Bearers that can't really get shot to death that easily, plus Flamers that can bounce around and do actions or kill infantry when you need them to, makes a ton of sense. I actually really... I like this list conceptually, just because I think the three detachments sort of plug each other's gaps pretty well, which sounds bad, but it is a chaos-themed list, and we do we have Mark of Slaanesh stuff? No, not really. But the War Dogs obviously are very aggressive, give a lot of sort of disruptive objective secure where they can run into enemy objectives and steal their objectives away. But what they lack oftentimes is protection for their home objectives, and that's what the demons give you. They also often lack the ability to do tons of damage to infantry, and then Flamers can do that too. So I kind of love that. We do have some Adeptus Sororitas from Leotis Games. This is a Bloody Rose, good stuff list. Canoness, Morvenval, 3 units of Battle Sisters, 3 units of Sisters Repentia, 2 of 8, 1 of 4. Some Crusaders to do actions in the back, a Dogmata, 2 units of 8 Zephyrum, 1 unit of 5 Seraphim, a Castigator, 2 Retributor squads, and a Rhino. Not too much to talk about there, chat. Sort of normal Sororitas list. And then we do have a light Sadith Harlequin list. I guess we can ask yourself the question right now: is it all troops and Starweavers, or are there Void Weavers today? Lock your answers in, and then we'll take a look. It is double Troop Master, which is pretty interesting. One of them to carry Laughing God's Eye. I guess so you can play the Laughing God's Eye more aggressively, and you're not worried about losing a Shadow Seer, who's a little bit more of an investment. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Harlequin troops. 1 unit of Skyweavers. How many Starweavers? 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Starweavers. For 6 troops, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Then we have another detachment, and then we have a patrol detachment. All right, it is all troops, chat. So it's 9 Starweavers, 1 Shadow Seer. Exciting stuff. Chat, Crusaders are very competitive. A very competitive pick for Adeptus Sororitas. The problem with Crusaders, I think, this is going back to Andy Sulkeld's list. The problem with Crusaders is that they fight for elite slots with a lot of really powerful Sororitas units. But it's like the Cyberwolf. It's the Cyberwolf thing, where if you have a low model count unit that's useful, that has useful keywords, it's worth taking basically regardless of what actually it is, because these guys, especially being infantry keyworded, they can perform actions. They're kind of difficult to kill. They can just score tertiary objectives. They can just do whatever. So for 22 points, like, they're fine. Moving on. Kurtodian Total Carnage. You do have Manny Chima here. Manny Chima not playing in a Glasshammer GT chat. Can you imagine running Glasshammer but not playing in your enemy? I'm just kidding. This is the Emperor's Children list. But we do have a Tzeentchian Vanguard detachment, so this is Chaos Space Marine. This is a mixed chaos. Don't love these. It's not Emperor's Children list, chat. It's a mixed chaos list. That's okay. That's meaningless unless you're trying to track ITC scores, basically. Whatever the faction of the list is. It actually has no rules implication whatsoever except for competitive play. But it also is determined differently in different formats. So who knows? In my opinion, whatever the common keyword between all your units is what your army should be. So basically, the soupier you get, the more broad your faction keyword has to be. But it doesn't really mean anything. We do have one Dark Apostle, Master of Possession, so no Smash characters in the detachment. We do have Abaddon, so we do have a big smashy boy there. 5 units of Noise Marines, tons of objectives secured, plus the Chaos Terminator unit. That's good. The objective secured is good because it looks like we have 12 Flamers in a Tzeentch Vanguard detachment. So good damage, but less good at holding objectives. Fortunately, that's what the Noise Marines are for. Plus a Change Caster with Infernal Flames. And then Abaddon, the display. Okay. So sort of Chaos good stuff. I do appreciate that the Chaos Super Faction's coming back. I do hope that it comes back with a little bit more spice than just sort of Flamers plus whatever the best Chaos Space Marine list of the day is. Maybe we need a nerf to Flamers. It's too bad because I think that Flamers and Chaos Demons are actually they're like maybe a little bit too powerful, but they're probably fine. But I think that Flamers in Chaos Space Marine specifically are probably too strong. It's that like the Demon Codex kind of pulls them down, but if you put them into an army that isn't restricted by the Demon Codex being sort of mediocre, they sort of go off the handle, and I don't love that too much. And that was always the downside of souping in the past, is that you could sort of you could just sort of take good stuff lists that bring everything from every faction, and I think we're getting back to that a little bit, but specifically for Chaos, not so much with the other ones. This is Necrons, also coming out of Kurtodian Total Carnage. This is a OBSEC Dynasty. We're going heavy on Scarab Swarms this time around. 2 Doomsize as well, so it's a little bit more of the vehicle-centric version. So 1 Chronomancer, 9 Scarab Swarms, 6 Scarab Swarms, 3 Scarab Swarms, so a total of 18. 1 unit of Tomb Blades, the 2 Doom Scythes, the Silent King, and then a Vanguard detachment with 2 Plasma Scythes, a Technomancer, 6 Scorpex, 1 Canoptic Spider, and 1 Catan Shard of the Void Dragon. So this is kind of all over the place. It's like a mix of the vehicle-centric lists that we see, plus the Scarab like Wombo combo. We're just missing the Reanimator basically in the Scarab combo. Also, is there a Chronomancer? There is, yeah. So you can 5+ Invulnerable Save a Scarab Swarm, +1 Reanimation it, so it has a better chance of regenerating guys every time. And then the Tomb Spider can bring a guy back. We have everything in there but the Reanimator, but we've used those points to get a Shard of the Void Dragon, which is good in some situations. I'm not going to look at a 4th Emperor's Children list this time, so sorry, Stephen Connell. You get the shaft this time around. But that moves us on to our last event of the weekend, chat. South Georgia Havoc. Marcus Johnson 5-0 at first place with Adepta Sororitas. This is basically the same list that we just looked at. This time we have Death Cult Assassins instead of Crusaders, though. We're really changing things up today. We do have a Dialogus. That's interesting. A Dialogus and a Dogmata. So we have the Refrain of Blazing Piety. You see this a lot in the Dogmata, or you can take your support powers on a Preacher and then put Refrain of Blazing Piety on a Dogmata, but that's mostly so that you can pay a CP to nuke a Chaos unit within 12 for 3 mortal wounds. It's good at killing Abaddon, it's good at killing Flamers, it's good at killing Terminators. For 1 CP, just getting that extra little bit of efficiency out is pretty good, and I think having it on the Dialogus is a little bit cheaper. Dogmata makes a ton of sense. Canonus and Morphinval, 3 Battle Sister squads, 3 units of Sisters Repentia. This is 24 Sisters Repentia rather than 20, so a little bit different than we were looking at earlier. 2 units of Zephyrim, 1 unit of 5 Zephyrim to do some actions. A little bit of a cheaper option than the Seraphim, but less useful. And 3 Retributor squads with a Rhino. Okay, fair enough. So maybe going to try to Alpha Strike either with a Repentia unit or 2 of these Retributor squads with the pregame move from Bloody Rose with that Rhino. And then the last one can get buffed up by Morphinval because it's outside of the transport. Andy Patton, Seabiscuit with a 5-0. Had him on the channel quite a bit. Usually plays Space Wolves, but I think he's gone to the slightly more effective melee Space Marine faction, playing some Black Legion today, which is it is what it is. We have a Winged Demon Prince, Dark Apostle, Lord is Gordon, Hellstalker. I will give Seabiscuit credit for not playing Emperor's Children like everyone else, so. That's something. We do have a Mark Slash Legionnaire unit, 2 units of Cultists with a Balefire Tomb in that Legionnaire unit. We've painted our Chaos Terminator unit black this time around for our Black Rune of Damnation. We've taken a unit of 9 Rubric Marines with an Icon of Flame. That's interesting, with Warp Flamers. So doing a little bit of a Flamer... we're aping Flamers a little bit. We're doing it within the Codex rather than taking allies. Plus 2 units of Raptors. I imagine mostly because they are useful utility units. 1 Chaos Rhino, probably to put those Rubric Marines inside, and then Abaddon, the Despoiler himself. It's a very straightforward list, I think. We have a big punchy unit that goes inside a Rhino, plus a big Terminator brick, and then Abaddon pumps it up with guns. Feels kind of small. Or pumps up with rerolls. You can also use the Raptors to trade pretty well because Abaddon will give them full reroll, so they can trade with Objective Secured Infantry. But that's the whole list. Is that the whole list? 1,700. Oh, do we have 300 points for like summoning? No. Oh no, 300 points for Abaddon, of course. Wow. All right. I guess these are 600, right? That's 300, so that's 900, plus the character, plus this is another, and the characters are 3, almost 500. Yeah, I guess that math checks out, but it feels like we're at 4 characters, 3 garbage Obsec units, 2 big bricks, and 2 little jump pack units. It feels tiny, chat. Maybe I'm used to looking at this list, but also has 3 units of Flamers in it. But congratulations to 5-0 to Seabiscuit. That's pretty cool. Thought Nephilim made soup lists really hard. I wouldn't say really hard, but I think specifically for Chaos, they're good because Chaos has a ton of inner faction synergy, and that's always sort of been Chaos's thing, is that their lists are kind of all over the place because they can soup better than everyone else can, because they give themselves Agent of Chaos a lot to allow people to unlock their faction abilities. Nick and Zulatos with Necrons. Normal Necrons. 2 units of Scorpion Destroyers. Okay, we just looked at this list. We're gonna skip that one. That's the same list that we looked at, basically. It's a little different, but it's basically the same. We do have a Tau Sept list here. Stephen Crawley, 4-1 with Tau. Tau's really killing it right now, by the way. Tau's like sort of constantly 4-1. This is a Triptide list, I think. Yeah, 2 Sunshark Bombers, Commander Shadow Sun, Aunva, double Riptide, Crisis Battlesuit Brick, plus Long Strike and a Cold Star Commander Battlesuit. I love this style of list, chat. So not all in on the Triptide, but instead we do have the 1 Crisis Battlesuit unit. No stealth suits, I don't believe. Yeah, no stealth suits. But we are saving some CP, taking Aunva instead of a Humble Stave Commander. We start at 1 CP, or a Humble Stave Ethereal, excuse me. The one downside of Aunva on these lists is that dude, he's kind of easy to pin down because he's so slow and he falls over into a stiff breeze, especially once his bodyguards go down. And that once you get into the brick, assassination becomes a real problem. Although We do only have 4 characters because we have the 2 specials and 2 in the battalion detachment. So, loving these styles of list, chat. I like that the Riptide Battlesuit is has become playable once again, and gives Tau their kind of jump, shoot, jump back, so they can deal damage to people over the course of the game while remaining out of line of sight. And I think that's awesome. So, congratulations to Stephen Raleigh with the 4-1. Last but certainly not least, Philip Paul with the Heretic Astartes list. This is the Creations of Bile. We did it. Southern Georgia, really with the not Emperor's Children over here. No Emperor's Children, no Thousand Sons. We're just playing we're playing sort of off meta Chaos Space Marine Legion, which is interesting. So the same troops loadout that we saw in Seabiscuit's list, basically. 1 Legionary, double Cultist mobs, 1 Dark Apostle, Lord Discordant, and Hellstalker. He's pretty good in Creations of Bile because if he sinks in and your opponent can't kill him, sometimes we see the Heretic's Mantle on him just to give him the +1 save, or the Gorget to give him the +1 save. So he's basically 0+ save. So it's very difficult to take down unless your AP is insane, and then his invulnerable save kicks in. If you force the opponent to charge you, you get 2 combat activations out of him if you get alpha, which is really strong. Master of Possession with Pact of Flesh. And then we've painted our Terminator brick, whatever color Bile likes to paint his army. I don't know if I've ever seen a canonical Creations of Bile army. Is it like purple? He's a Slanesh guy. I would assume it's purple. 10 Chosen with Mark of Corn, not Mark of Slanesh. Mark of Corn, plus 2 units of 5 Possessed, 5 Raptors. These are good for the Advance and Charge because they're core keyworded. Unlike Warp Talons in Creations of Bile, which I keep confusing. I keep confusing it too, and just saying that one is core and one's not. But the Raptors can Advance and Charge in Creations of Bile for a CP. 1 Venom Crawler for the +1 to cast, and Abaddon the Despoiler. Good stuff. Bile is kind of meta, but I think the general consensus has been that Emperor's Children has sort of pushed it out. So generally speaking, we see Emperor's Children now over Creations of Bile. So honestly, I mean, a pretty good brace of different factions. Lots of Chaos Space Marines this week, which is a little, I guess we haven't been seeing Chaos Space Marines sort of peak up more and more as time goes on. So that's maybe a little problematic. That faction may be getting solved, but they also got the benefit of the Demons release. So I think we're also seeing the effect of that because more and more of these lists are including Demons in them as well. So little concerning that we're seeing so many Heretic Astartes, but otherwise pretty interesting spread. But now, chat, we'll talk about the real topic that we want to do today, which is these frickin' Dataslate updates, chat. So I picked up 7 factions. I think are going to be the ones that we mostly get looked at, and I picked what I would like to see changed in them. We're starting with Tyranids, and obviously, chat, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. So my thoughts will be on the screen. But you can put your opinions in there. I think that Tyranids are in a very weird place because I do think that they have been edged out of the metagame a little bit, mostly by Tzeentch Flamers. We are seeing these units that are being put into the metagame, and partially because of Tyranids, but also because they're really efficient, that have tons of Strength 5 shooting, which is exactly how you get rid of transhuman Tyranid units. Is that you don't care about transhuman, you don't care about -1 damage, you don't care about their invulnerable save because your AP is only middling, so none of their defensive technology works against you, and you don't even care about Venom Throws because you automatically hit, or you full reroll hits, or all of these different pieces of technology, and that's how you kill the Tyranid Warrior bricks. So we're seeing that the Warrior bricks, I think, in like sort of the classic Leviathan lists, are doing worse. It seems like Highfleet Kraken may be the one that comes out of nowhere. And the Mortal Wounds lists are still, I think, going to be very strong. So I think Tyranids are not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think they're quite the powerhouse that we saw previously. And as we just talked about, right, no Tyranids in the top 3 or top 5 last week. It was all Chaos Space Marines, all Demons, all these different builds. The week previous, we did see a lot more Tyranids, but they've been on the downtick quite a bit. So I'm not sure that Tyranids are as deserving of an enormous nerf. And obviously, you have to recognize my bias here as as someone who owns way too many Tyranids. I am certainly going to be a little bit biased. But I do think that they need a little bit of a tone down, and especially High Fleet Leviathan, because High Fleet Leviathan is far and away the most effective High Fleet out of all of them. I think, full on, they should just get rid of the transhuman for infantry. The stalwart effect is fine. It very rarely matters. So Leviathan, for those who don't know, gives every Synapse creature transhuman. And on top of that, if you are an infantry within, or a non-transhuman creature within 6 of a Synapse creature, you get Stalwart, so you can only be wounded on 3s. That one very rarely matters. Tyranids are relatively high toughness across the faction, so you're very rarely wounded on 2s, unless you're playing like a bunch of Termagants, in which case it's kind of a nice buff to units that are already kind of middling. The problem is that Tyranid Warriors are one of the most they're the most efficient unit in the Codex for sure, and they're one of the most efficient units in the game, and the transhuman also affects them. I don't think that should be the case, and I think they should just make it so they get Stalwart. Just give it to the big monsters. It basically gives you like you already have transhuman for monsters for a CP, so it basically gives you a reduction on using that stratagem. You get that stratagem for free on everybody, which is fine. So it's not like unlocking any technology that's new to the faction. It's just making it so you pay your sub-faction ability for it. But the transhuman on mass numbers of Tyranid Warriors gets a little abusive, especially against armies that can't deal with it. So just make them Stalwart. You can't be wounded on 2s. That's probably fine. I do think Hive Tyrants and Warriors probably still need a little bit of points increase. I'd like to see Hive Tyrants maybe go up 10, 15 points. Tyranid Warriors could withstand a 5-point bump, but I'd rather see them go up for particular weapon combinations, but I think that's very difficult to do. And I think maybe you could just see them go to, between 32 and 35 points a model rather than 30. So you shave off a couple points on the Tyranid army, you make their most effective sub-faction less powerful, and I think you're probably in a pretty good spot. Sort of like, people like to see Reaper of Obliterax get removed. Reaper of Obliterax is whatever, chat. Reaper of Obliterax is only good because more of Mortal Wounds. That's whatever. No one else has had an Exocrine delete units of these. Exocrines are kind of mediocre, honestly. They're extremely expensive. They're 200 points for an Exocrine for a thing that can't shoot in melee and shoots one time. If you engage them in melee, they do literally nothing. So I think Exocrines are sort of what are kind of fine. Honestly, Exocrines could almost go down in points, but they're like okay. How can they make Gaunt or Termagant lists work? They're already doing pretty well right now. The Termagant lists are sort of the second archetype, and usually it's backed up by warriors, but you use like 60 Termagants plus a Turbogon to play for primary and buy time for warriors to get into position to charge. Exocrine does not need to go over level, chat. No way. They do points adjustments. So the data slate itself is only half of the update. There is also a Munitorum Field Manual update as well, for sure. Yeah. Just points for Tyranids, says Viridian Shallows. Bring back Hiveguard. Yeah, just put Hiveguard back to their 8th edition and ignore the indirect fire nerf. that would be fine. What would I do to Spore Mines? I think Spore Mines need to have the rider that they can't move after being set up. Just fix the fucking reinforcement rules. They're so stupid right now. Honestly, I think they're fine. I don't think the Spore Mine stuff needs to be changed at all. I don't think the Spore Mine units are particularly strong. Yeah. I think that the only change needs to be that Spore Mines out of Harpies can't move. They need to be classed as reinforcements, which they're not right now. But I think that's the only change that needs to be made. Exocrines were good at the start of the Codex because they were 30 points less expensive, but they went up 30 points in the previous data slate for kind of no reason. They weren't it was like a 0 to 1 in some lists. And maybe it was because like the other stuff in the Codex was so efficient that you could afford an Exocrine. But it was sort of out of nowhere that Exocrine's point went up, which was wild. I think maybe it was the direct comparison with Haruspexes, because Haruspexes were the same points cost and were like dramatically worse in every way. But Exocrines had the same points value and basically like did their damage, but at 36-inch range. So yeah, I mean, I think at 200 points, Exocrines are like totally fine. They're just not. They're sort of fringe playable. They're not good. Yeah. Tyranids have already had enough mechanical tweaks. Yeah, but I think Tyranid's problem is mechanics, to be fair. If you like, if you could change the points however you want, but I think that the problem becomes that they can spam too many wounds at transhuman, and that's some metagames can deal with it, some metagames can't, and the ones that can't just get run over by whatever that they have that is transhuman. And I think that is the real problem. So anyway, that's what I have to say about Tyranids. I'm looking forward to the comment section where everyone like yells at me for being biased towards Tyranids and only suggesting 2 changes to them. But I have a sneaking suspicion, chat, that even if Tyranids were to see no changes in the data slate, their win rate would drop, not precipitously, but they feel like a 55% faction right now. And I just don't think that I think that the changes in the metagame haven't been reflected in sort of stats right now. But I think that people are so much better at killing Tyranids than they were 2-3 months ago, mostly because of all the new chaos stuff. I don't think that. Oh, I guess I should preface this too, right? So I laid out a couple of rules for myself. First off, I don't think there's going to be any Nephilim changes, or at least I'm not expecting any Nephilim changes. So I'm not expecting any changes for any of these factions to secondary objectives, which are what some factions really need to get changed. So I'm just going off the assumption that we're only going to see actual mechanical changes to them, which will be the reason for some of the changes that I sort of prognosticate on. The other thing is that I don't think we're going to see like wide sweeping changes to units, like to lesser played units and codexes. So I know there's like. And even sub-factions. So I know some people have been like, oh, I want, my favorite sub-faction, whatever faction to get changed. And for the most part, that has not been Games Workshop's MO. They don't like they're less concerned with internal balancing of codexes, and I don't think we'll see any of that changing. I think they will be focused almost entirely on external balancing with new data slates, which has been typically how they operate. Let's move on. Yeah, I don't know if there'll be secondary changes, chat, but I think it's safer to assume that there won't be, basically. rather than getting my hopes up that secondaries for like Necrons get changed, I think that it is more likely we see big changes to their codex. Speaking of Necrons, here's Necrons. Look at them. There they are. There's the Silent King. There's all his friends. I think this is a faction that does need mechanical changes. Regardless of whether or not you think Tyranids do, Necrons are basically carried entirely by both their entry in Warzone Nephilim and also how broken their rules are. Not necessarily their data slate statistics or their points values, but just the rules that they have in their codex. First up, I think the OBSEC Relentlessly Expansionist Wombo combo is really stupid. There's a lot of situations where it gives you an automatic win if you go first, and that's real dumb. Either you deal crippling damage to your opponent with the ranged Alpha Strike because you have a bunch of vehicles that get full rerolls, or you just steal all their objectives and you perform Ancient Machineries on their deployment zone on the top of one, and there's literally nothing most factions can do about it. And that's real stupid. Just bin Relentlessly Expansionist. Take a different sub-faction ability. That's not that one. I think it's pretty commonly suggested that like, oh well, what if you Hail of Doom Eternal Conquerors, so the all objective secure dynasty can only take one sub-faction ability. The problem is that sub-faction ability already exists elsewhere in the codex. So it's certainly a downgrade to move from Relentlessly Expansionist Eternal Conquerors to Nylock Dynasty, but you also unlock additional abilities for them. I would rather see it be Nylock versus taking a custom subfaction be more of a side grade. Either way, I think that Relentlessly Expansionist is part of the problem, but I feel like Eternal Conquerors is too integral to the Necron game plan at this point. And I think that while, you know, turbo nerfing it or changing it significantly is like could be a direction that they go in, I would be worried that it makes Necrons too non-competitive. Like their secondaries are so good, but one of the reasons their secondaries are so good is that the faction's really good at scoring them efficiently because their entire army can take objectives from their opponent. If you restrict that objective so you're down to just like Immortals, that's very transformative, and I think that dumpsters the game plan quite a bit. So I'd prefer to see a Relentlessly Expansionist get axed. It adds time to the Necron player's clock because they don't have to take like 3 movement phases in a row. So, you know, really it's a buff when you think about it that way. Vehicle characters, I feel like should lose core, particularly the Silent King. The fact that he's one of the few characters in the game that affects himself with his own aura buffs is pretty silly, especially since all of his aura buffs are really good for himself. I think that one was an oversight. I think that they probably just forgot that they had several vehicle keyworded characters in the faction, so when they gave all the vehicles core, they also affected them. It was probably just weird. My Will Be Done currently targets any core unit, so right now it targets vehicles, and I'll die on the hill, chat, that I don't think the core keyword is a very good idea, and I think we're sort of seeing that more and more as time goes on, where the fact that buffs are selectively applied over the course of a codex is harmful overall to the codex, and a lot of factions that are struggling just get the core keyword support removed entirely. And just like everyone, and Necrons are the example. Basically, everyone in the Necron codex is core. Not literally everything, but almost everything. And functionally in competitive list, everything is core. So I mean, you know, maybe if we were gonna spiral into 10th edition, we would see core, you know, get replaced by something different entirely, by more targeted effects that can only affect particular unit types rather than this binary thing. But as it stands, I mean, we're kind of stuck with it, but I would rather see vehicles go back to just operating like everyone else. Necrons do that currently, where their vehicles are just regular units, basically, except that My Will Be Done targets them, and I think that is a bridge too far, where the buff that Necron characters have that was originally explicitly supposed to be for their warriors and their destroyers, their infantry that they could buff and then send out to go do stuff, now affects airplanes and, you know, ghost arcs. Like, it's a little funky. I think that would. And the fact that also they can now target themselves with it, so like Silent King can give himself +1 to hit and rerolls to get around penalties, is a little silly. So that's what I would say about that. Maybe you can't res the Silent King's shield miniers. Yeah, I mean, that would also, if he lost core, he would not be able to do that. But also on the flip side, I've literally never seen that done. So even in formats where it's allowed, you take a Luminor Seraz and you end up just paying more points for a Technomancer than you normally would. So I think it's mostly a trap. It's technology that you can include in your list or when your opponent rolls bad, but most opponents will they will either leave the minions alive or kill all of them and then the Silent King on top of that in one swing. And you're spending like 100, he's 150 points, I think, to basically say, like, don't target at my Silent King until you can kill him. And then your opponent's like, well, I wasn't going to do that anyway, so sure. You know, he's going to heal 2 wounds a turn regardless. So if I if I don't kill him, a lot of my damage gets reduced anyway. I like to imagine Trajan coming and ripping the Relentlessly Expansionist roll out of the codex. Yeah. He just gets in there, like he's got his big war scythe, and he like cuts that like one rule out of the subfaction section. It's like, just get out of here. Sort of like to see some changes to Catan, not because they're overpowered, but they just aren't fun to play against. I like playing against them. They're characters that have to play forward and can be psychically interrogated and can't deny, so that's fine. Yeah, I think Catan are fine, honestly. Like, they may be a little bit too expensive. I think that they should codify, and I mean, I doubt they'll do this, but they should codify whether or not you can double stack up Skies of Falling Stars, because the times where Catan get really frustrating is when you're in a format that allows you to do that. Rules as written, you cannot do that, but a lot of formats allow you to, and that is very frustrating for sure. Where they just like have 2 Catan sitting behind buildings, and they're just like, take 3 mortal wounds, take 3 mortal wounds, and you're just like, okay, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think it is okay. Yeah, I don't think Catan are particularly overpowered. They're just, they can be frustrating for sure, but I don't think they're overpowered. But that's, again, I think the other way you fix, if you were to change Necrons, I think the other way you fix them is that you just change their secondaries and you make their secondaries significantly harder. And I think the Codex is actually probably just fine. It is like, I mean, right now it's at like a mid-50s win percentage. It's not even right at the top, but there is a lot of players. You have to be very good to score like that max 100 that we see a lot of Necron armies get constantly. And there's a lot of players that are picking them up because they think they're really easy, and then they just lose. And they're sort of artificially dropping the win rate of the faction. It's also a very straightforward faction. Like, once you know the answers to beat them, you just beat them almost every time. Like, if you have the correct build to defeat Necrons, they'll just die to it. So you could, like, I don't think I want to get them like sort of saddled with massive nerfs. I think keeping their game plan intact but making it slightly less consistent is for sure. All right, let's move on. We got some friggin' Harlequins. Harlequins are currently one of the best performing factions of the game, and we don't hear too much about them because it's such a low player count. But I think that it is problematic that Harlequins have a massive win percentage. And while it's easy to beat them, or it's easy to mess up with them and lose with them, I think it's also equally easy to score really highly. So again, I mean, we could change Harlequin secondaries. I think Deadly Performance is like sort of insanely strong, and I would like to see that get nerfed. But again, we're not talking about secondaries. So I think you could... the fact that the faction is only made up of basically 2 units right now, which are Starweavers and Troops, means that targeting a nerf on that particular build is really easy because you just increase their points cost. Full stop. You just do that. That's easy. Capricious Reflections is the light Sadith stratagem to move when you are declared as a charge target, which makes them difficult to deal with in melee. And Light Sadith, for that reason, also has the highest win percentage out of all of the sub-factions by about 4 or 5 points. So just make it once per game, like they did to basically every stratagem in Adeptus Custodes, and then call it a day. Just like, Light Sadith, calm down. We need you to stop. Go play something else, and we can maybe nerf your transports while you're doing that. So you're less incentivized to take just 9 of them. As soon as, even though the faction is only built of a couple, different units, as soon as you see them gravitate towards the maximum number of any one of those units, it's probably something wrong. Incentivize them to take more Void Weavers, incentivize them to take Star Weavers, Sky Weavers, excuse me, and just call it good. Yeah. I don't know if we need to like sort of level the nerf bat like hugely at Harlequins. And honestly, like I said before, Chad, I think that what the game needs more than nerfs to the top factions right now is buffs to the bad factions. So that's what I would much rather see. But I do think that the one particular build that Harlequins are doing really doing a lot is should be nerfed. Steve Turner, no more objective secured for Silent King. Silent King does not get objective secured, chat. I just want to clear that up real quick. I know we're a little bit behind there, but Silent King is Saracen and a dynastic agent. So he does not get your custom trait, your custom dynasty traits, and he also does not get any dynasty traits because he's dynastic agent keyworded. So if your opponent tells you that Silent King has objective secured, tell them to, go do something unspeakable to themselves because they're lying to you. Yeah. That's what I have to say about that. Let's move on. Next one. What do we got? Adeptus Sororitas. Let's go. Adeptus Sororitas are they're like a tough one. Because there is kind of one list build, but the one list build that they have is constructive of like a billion different units. And I do think that there is a Valorous Heart list, and we see it on stream a lot because Ashley in the server plays it a ton, and I do think it's really, really strong and very difficult to super difficult to beat. But it's a little bit more straightforward than the Bloody Rose style of list. So it's hard to sort of target a nerf anywhere. If you were going to increase points on one thing, it would only affect that one thing. So if you're like, oh, well, Retributors go up 10 points, but they only take 2 Retributor squads. So like, okay, I've got 20 points from my list. So you also then have to hit Repentia, and they're like, Repentia up 10 points. And they're like, okay, so now I have to trim 70 points. And like, now it hurts, but I'll just move to Zephyrim. So then you also have to hit Zephyrim. So you have to hit like every single unit in the Codex to actually nerf the faction. So I do think that the problem is twofold. It's the efficiency of the units and also their secondaries. And you can hit both of those with one swell foop by just nerfing Miracle Dice generation. Right now, you get a Miracle Dice at the start of every turn, and I think it's too much. That was a change in the latest data slate. It unlocks Leap of Faith in a big way, and it makes their game plan very consistent because they end up scoring a ton of Miracle Dice if they're getting 2 each battle round plus however many they generate naturally. So you just you make Leap of Faith significantly harder by nerfing Miracle Dice generation, and you nerf the consistency of the faction. Bada bing, bada boom. Sacred Rites chosen at list construction doesn't usually matter because you always take the passion. But every once in a while you get a tech pick that can really mess with somebody. And I don't know if that's particularly strong. Maybe I'm just salty that adaptive traits got nerfed in that way. We see the same thing. But it is weird that those modal abilities on almost every other faction have been locked to pregame selection, or to list building selection, and Sororitas still have theirs at pregame. And that is what I have to say about that. So, it is what it is. Town need buffs? Untrue. Wrong. No. Some people complaining about Armor of Contempt. I think Armor of Contempt is fine, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's okay. I think if people have problems with Armor of Contempt plus Light Cover, the problem really is with Light Cover more than it is with Armor of Contempt. The way that Light Cover is implemented in 40k is like a little bit funky. I don't think it's amazing. Yeah, for sure, chat. You get a ton of Miracle Dice if you're you score 1 at the start of your turn, 1 in the shooting phase, 1 in the fight phase, because you like pregame move a Rhino, jump Repentia out of it, blow something up with the Repentia, shoot Retributor to something. So you're already at 3. Then like lose a character, or like lose the Repentia in your opponent's turn and generate 1 at the start of the turn. So you're at 5, like very consistently by the bottom of round 1, which is just crazy. Like that maxes your scoring on. If you spend all 5 of those over the course of that battle round, you basically just max your Leap of Faith that turn. It's pretty silly. Yeah. Reaper of a Bliterax capped at 6 more wins. Reaper of a Bliterax is fine, chat. Man, maybe I just play factions that don't get hit by Reaper of a Bliterax that much. But have you ever seen Maw-Claws of Thyrax work? That relic is so dumb. Reaper of a Bliterax is whatever. I don't know. Chat. Zinj Flamers causing less than Fire Warriors? Zinj Flamers may need looking at for sure. I agree. But the Chaos Demons Codex has not been out very long, and I kind of don't anticipate it being changed. It may get changed in an FAQ to the Codex itself, but I don't know if there will be a change in the Dataslate update. Because it feels like they always have their sort of like their like mistake fixing FAQ, and I think that will include a change to Zinj Flamers. Honestly, I think they typed with Zinj Flamers and they were supposed to be D3 plus 3 shots, and they made them D6 plus 3 instead. And I think that change alone would probably still make them very efficient, but reduce kind of like the stupidity of that unit shooting 40 times for like no reason. All right. Let's move on. Next one. Craft World Eldar. The Webway Gate breaks your Miracle Dice. And they had when the Codex was released, they had an exception for it in the Miracle Dice or in the Strands of Fate rule, and then they removed it. And it has never been fixed. So if you bring a Webway Gate, it breaks your strands. That's the only change. Please God. I'm tired of having this conversation with people. It's so fucking stupid. The Webway Gate's not even that good. And it's super dumb. There's always two stages of FAQs, chat, for a new codex. There's like a hot fix FAQ where they fix like wording that they fucked up, like the Armor of Contempt or the Armor of Score not doing anything. And malefic weapons randomly like turning on or off depending on what your weapon special abilities were. And then they have like a balance change that's like 2 to 3 months after the codex gets released. That's always been the way of things. So we've gotten through our typo fixing FAQ, and we're gonna have a balance FAQ in a little bit. Whether or not that gets rolled into the Dataslate, I don't know. But I kind of doubt it, though, especially the way that they were talking about the interaction in their Meta Watch article, where they talked about how they were looking at the metagame. It sounded like they were very results oriented, and I don't know if they would have enough statistical evidence to determine whether or not demons are broken. I mean, I think flamers are probably broken. It is what it is. Flamers going to 30? That would be fine, honestly. I think flamers going to 30 would be okay. I think they could go to 30 and be D3 plus 3 shots and be a fine unit, just not ridiculously broken. But right now they're kind of ridiculously broken. So it is what it is. Otherwise, I think Eldar like totally just whatever. Yanari's good. They're good if you bring they're good in Eldari soup. And there are some Craft World builds that you can play that I think are interesting. They're kind of like mediocre right now. They're around the 50%, but I think that's fine. But just fix your mechanical problems. DW, what the fuck? All right. Moving on. This is most of it. Moving on from the Eldar meme here. Adeptus Mechanicus. So now we're at the buff stage. So looking at, I actually, and we can take a look at stat check here because I was, okay. My OBS flickered for a second there. Looked like I lost connection, but we are back. I was peering through stat check in preparation for this, and then I clicked on something when I was trying to enlarge the window. I lost it. Here we go. Become big. And if we look at the bottom section of the meta, it's basically all Space Marines. So the stuff within the center band here is the stuff that, in my opinion, is like totally fine. So this, 40% does need some buffs. Almost every 40%er is a Space Marine. 1,000 Suns are at 46. This is up to date as of last week, and I think we saw some really good 1,000 Suns results last week. I don't think 1,000 Suns quite need any buffs right now, especially once they're in a Chaos Soup. Death Guard probably needs some help for sure, but almost literally everything else is Grey Knights or Codex Space Marines. So there's Adeptus Mechanicus down here, and then everything else is Space Marines. Astroville Tarim we can sort of ignore because they're going to get a new codex, so everything's going to change for them in just a little bit. So really, the focus here is on AdMac, which is at this ridiculous 38%, and then all this garbage Space Marine factions. So Imperial Fists may be like the worst. Has there been a sub-faction in history that has had this win rate? 24%? Like, that has to be like a record, right? It's so bad. They win 1 out of 4 games. Like, I don't know. Part of the problem is how data gets broken down for Space Marines, where individual sub-factions get tracked, whereas otherwise they don't. If we were to like track, for example, like the worst Tyranid lists independently, they would also have a similarly bad win rate. But man, Imperial Fist sucks super hard. So that's why we'll talk about them later. But anyway, the other faction in that section is Adeptus Mechanicus. And honestly, I mean, Admech just sort of lack efficiency right now, which sort of doesn't make sense because that used to be their whole thing. But here's what I think. I think they should get the Necron treatment, where all their vehicles get core. If anyone's vehicles were to have core, it should be frickin' Admech, right? They're the vehicle faction. It's weird that only a couple of them do. Same for Cataphron Breachers, where all their Cataphrons, or their Cataphrons, are sort of bizarrely troops, but not core keyworded. So do that, and I think suddenly the internal consistency of the faction works a lot better. Also, that you have your holy orders are sort of core to how the faction functions, and you have to jump through this ridiculous hoop to unlock their advanced aura. Just let them choose. Those things that cost like 40 points to upgrade a character for it with a holy order. Just let them pick which one they get every turn. You could probably also see some points cuts to some stuff. It's hard to pick out exactly what needs points cuts in Adeptus Mechanicus, in my opinion. I mean, there's certainly some stuff like the Sulfur Hounds, I guess, like always get boned on points value for no reason. But I think for the most part, some mechanical changes would be important. Yeah. What about Custodies? Custodies are I believe, if I remember correctly, are dead 50%. 51%. So Custodies, they have a winning win record and otherwise are fine. Like, Custodies are exactly where a faction should be, at least in a win percentage. Like, I think they swing more heavily between different matchups, but Custodies are like the definition of a faction that does not need looking at. The same for you have Imperial Knights here. Tau are somehow at 50%. I think there's just maybe a lot of bad Tau players out there, despite the fact that they keep going 5-0 in events. I think they're just sort of being propped up by a couple people. But I think that these factions along this line, in no situation need any changes to them. That's my opinion. Can they ban Siegler from playing Admech at the same time as buffing? Get good, chat. If Siegler can win with Admech, you can too. Just become a professional 40k player who does it all the time and never does anything besides play 40k. Yeah. There's, I think the forces of the hive mind. Yeah, chat. It's a funny statistic because they were. I must have switched it. They were this morning. I think they've added some more results in. They were 69%, which is great. I love that. But yeah, it's definitely two people for sure. High Fleet Behemoth plus something. So if Behemoth plus Twisted Helix, 83% win rate. So what is that? 6-1. 7-3 for Behemoth plus Cult of Forerunner Emperor. So I think there's one person, and this is their baby list. This is their pet list, and that's all they play, and they do really well with it. So good on them. But obviously the the total games for the 68% win rate is 25. So you definitely can't really. That is the definition of a small sample size. You can't really buff or nerf based on that. But otherwise, Genestealer Occult specifically, they have been spending most of the game as one of the worst factions, but they have brought themselves back up to around a 50% win rate. So Genestealer Cults at their core don't really need too many changes. Tyranids do need massive buffs, chat. I agree. Always buffs for Tyranids, for sure. The perfect buck for Admech would be to let them ignore Armor of Contempt. I could see that, actually. You ignore AP modifiers. Any or all AP modifiers. I could certainly see that be the case. You could make a blanket roll for Admech where they ignore attack modifiers or something. That would be pretty interesting for them with their ranged attacks. I think personally I'm gun shy from the absolute hammering that Adeptus Mechanicus gave everyone at last year, because Adeptus Mechanicus was like the most broken thing that 9th edition has like ever experienced. And I think that it was the amount that they got nerfed was absolutely justified. They were so broken, they required a change to the core rules of the game to nerf effectively, which is like insane, right? Like they were almost too broken for changes to their codex to take effect. And so I think that the snowball goes the other way pretty quickly. If you remove every single nerf and just bring them back to where they were, I do think that they become ridiculously oppressive. But obviously they're doing really poorly right now, and they do need a buff. So we gotta do something to fix them. Yeah. Buff AdMech hurt Space Marines. Yeah, I mean, maybe if AdMech just become the Space Marine killers. But remember, it's not just Space Marines that have Armor of Contempt, right? It's everything that's Astartes keyworded. So you start hitting, like Heretic Astartes may, based on the results from this past weekend, maybe the best army in the game. If you make Adeptus Mechanicus the Heretic Astartes killer, suddenly they have a place in the metagame right now, and which they currently don't. And I think that would be really interesting. But also ignoring other hit modifiers like also makes them good against Harlequins, and also makes them good into all these other matchups that I think are at least they give the faction some uniqueness. So I actually really like that idea, chat. I think that would be pretty cool. Can I fill in on the history of why Adeptus Mechanicus is broken? Yeah, for sure. It was so. Here's the saga, chat. Basically, I started playing in 2019, so end of 8th edition. In early 2020, we got the Psychic Awakening cycle, which was a series of sort of narrative books that came out with army updates. Adeptus Mechanicus got new units in that, and they got specifically their aircraft, and they got custom subfaction abilities. And a combo between the custom subfaction abilities and the aircraft was a 6+ damage ignore for all your vehicles, already pretty good. And if you were within half range with Cognus weapons, which was basically every gun on the aircraft, you got full rerolls to hit. Not +1 to hit, not reroll ones, full rerolls to hit. So AdMech played. They basically bounced between Wombo comboing out a Belisarius Call and Martian Scorpius Disintegrators with playing airplanes. And the airplanes were like unreasonably broken. They were they're T7 for some reason. They have an upgrade for -1 damage, and so they and then also they could be buffed if you in some circumstances they could be buffed with faction abilities. Now they get the Skitari imperatives, but previously they also got the canticles. So they're super tough. You couldn't really shoot too many of them to death. You played 6 of them, and then immediately they would go and they would like kill your whole army in one turn. It was amazing. It was super fun. The other build used Lucius, and once the 9th edition codex came out, that airplane list was still legal. Nothing changed about it at all. All of the sub-faction abilities were there. The units didn't change point cost. The upgrades got better. It used to be that the -1 damage upgrade was ranged attacks only and became all attacks. And then they also added the archetype where you could play Lucius. You could use your command phase buffs and they would stack on all of your units, and then you could teleport them with Solar Flare once per game. So you have the choice between either playing these ridiculously powerful Wombo comboed infantry units that would kill everything, or you could just play airplanes that would fly into your opponent's deployment zone and kill them. They eventually they got changed so that their command phase abilities didn't stack. A lot of their stuff lost core keyword, and they kept losing all these abilities, but the plane list sort of remained strong throughout the entire thing. What's up, Cat? You're back. So eventually, the rule of 2 for flyers, we can only include 2 flyers in your list, was implemented as almost a direct result to that list specifically. It was so broken that they had to introduce a rule restricting the number of airplanes you could take. And it was really dumb. That's what I have to say about that. So, there you go. Yeah, it was a list where if you lost the roll to go first, I mean, if you won the roll to go first, you probably lost anyway, regardless of what was going on. Hey, what's up, girl? If you lost the roll to go first, you might as well pick up your models and leave, because the airplanes would kill you immediately. They would kill probably 700 to 1,000 points of your army, and then be -1 damage, -1 to hit, +1 save. You're like, okay, cool. Good stuff. So that is the sequence of really broken AdMech armies that have been that led us to the state where AdMech got massive numbers of sequential nerfs to the points where they had a 38% win rate. Now they've overcorrected a little bit. Now we need to go back to where they were. I think we have to. They have to make sure that those Alpha Strike lists that AdMech used to have are not good, are not the way to play, but they do need some archetypes that are useful, and right now they don't really have too many. Anyway, woo, that is a lot to talk about Adeptus Mechanicus, chaps. If you YouTube search Warhammer bad manners, the first hit is flyer spam? Maybe. I think let's see, if we want to, I did an Adeptus Mechanicus video. I did an Adeptus Mechanicus video, and I talked about flyer spam, but I think it was immediately after it had been nerfed. Oh my god, my cat is directly in my way now.
Version of Adeptus Mechanicus.
Let's do the thing. It was immediately after it had been nerfed, but I included some clips from how stupid it was. Let me see if I can find it. I did like a faction breakdown. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, so this is the Season 2 Invitational. And this was like a Tyranid player going second against airplanes, I think. Yeah, this is Harlequins just getting shot off the table. In all of these matchups, like the game was not close. So the game was over in basically 2 turns. But yeah, you would just cover the board with, like, Iron Striders were so cheap. You could take Iron, and I don't think that they've been changed too much in their points value. They were, for an autocannon Iron Strider, was 65 points, I think. So, and the airplanes were like between 140 and 170 with the upgrades. So you could take 6 airplanes and then just literally fill out the rest of your list with Iron Strider Ballistari, which is a little crazy. Yeah, and this is the combination of the what do you call it? Sub-faction abilities. Yeah. Pretty good. To be fair, chat, it was not 6 of the same flyer. It was 3 Fuselages, 3 Stratoraptors. The Stratoraptors are really strong because you could the full rerolls on their weapons were stronger, so the full rerolls was better. And then the Fuselages obviously had bombs, so they had mortal wound output from those. And then you also have a stratagem to auto explode too. So you would push them into your opponent's army, they would finally kill one, and then you would auto explode and do more mortal wounds to them. It was like such a wombo combo of like damage. It was very stupid. Anyway, that's Adeptus Mechanicus. We've done it. Do I think they'll nerf anything in Eldar? I don't think so. Chase Chapel. I don't think that Eldar will see any nerfs for sure. I think that Eldar, I think Harlequins will see nerfs. I don't think that Craft Worlds or Yunari will, for sure. Do I think they'll ever? I would ever do a tier list of pre-nerf armies. Like it's like so hard to compare, right? Because I imagine you're talking about like armies upon release, right? Like if you were to tier list every army without any erratas to it, it's very difficult. I guess you could do a breakdown of like the most broken army compositions ever in 40k. Like that list would be on it. Like the Orc Speedwa would be on it. What else would be there? I guess like 8th. I guess you could stick it to 9th edition only. The Magnus list, where Magnus smited infinite times, would probably be on there. Space Wolves with full army Obsac would probably be on there, and pre-nerf Tempests. Tau on release. So yeah, that would actually be kind of a fun video, to be honest. Will Custodies get any changes? I don't think so, chat. We just talked about it. Custodies are a 51% win rate, and I think the stuff in that 50% band is not going to see any changes. There's no reason. Yeah, the broadside list with Longstrike getting Bodyguard. That was good, yeah. Yeah, pre-nerf Bodyguard was so stupid. You could also talk about, like, I guess pre-nerf, like on release Tyranids, where Encircle the Prey was like usable multiple times a turn and made you invincible. Good stuff. All right, last but certainly not least, let's go to the other faction at the bottom of this freaking list here, chat. This is the old Space Marines. So basically, every army in that, besides AdMech, every army in that below 40% win rate category is a Space Marine subfaction. And I don't think anyone can argue that Space Marines are not hot fucking garbage right now. So let's talk about that. What was Infinite Smite Magnus? On release in 9th edition, Smite was not restricted to once per Psyker. So you could have Magnus with like +3 to cast, just casting 3 or 4 Smites a turn. That was it, basically. So I think that I think we've talked about it on stream a little bit before, but assault squads and like Imperial Guard infantry squads get all of their special weapon and heavy weapon upgrades for free. What I want to see is Space Marines move to a less ridiculous, list building system where all of their units have their special and heavy weapon cost rolled into the cost of the unit. Tactical squads, for example, could just be 17 points a model. They're 18 right now, and just get all their special weapons for free. That unit is hot garbage. You could give them a bunch of free stuff, and it wouldn't change too much. And I think you could do the same with a lot of the other units in the Codex. Just give them free weapons, basically. Give them cheaper troops options in addition, not just troops with better weapons, although that is good. But the fact that you're paying immense numbers of points for things like Intercessor, like standard Intercessors and standard Tactical Marines, which are a huge bleed on your detachments, is really brutal. Since the focus of the Space Marine Codex is not your troops, it's your characters and it's your elite slots. So the troops are just attacks, and their troops are some of the most expensive in the game, and that's wild. When the Doctrine Mechanic was released, this is a little bit of another little history lesson for the people who don't know. When the Doctrine Mechanic was released, you could choose whether or not your doctrine rolled forward every round. That was really broken back in the day because they were basically the only faction with that mechanic. So you could build around things with Devastator Doctrine, for example. And this it made Iron Hands really broken because their super doctrine and their buff to heavy weapons is really strong. And it would probably do so again. But I think it would be for the faction as a whole, it would be a positive change. You could just remove the change where you have to progress your doctrine. You're required to every battle round. You could just make it so you could stay in the same doctrine permanently. You'd still have to progress through to future doctrines through the normal system. So you'd have to start at Devastator, then move to Tactical, then move to Assault. But you could, if you wanted to, stay in the current doctrine that you're in. So you could spend one turn in Devastator, move to Tactical, stay in Tactical all game if you're Salamanders, for example, or if you're Iron Hands or something, you just stay in Devastator all game. Obviously, it's better significantly better for the factions that use Devastator Doctrine mechanics. But if we're looking at Space Marines holistically, the whole faction's bad. So you got to do something. And then Ultramarines, Imperial Fists, Raven Guard, just get rid of their chapter tactic, throw a new one in there. They're so bad, and they really need help. Maybe even Super Doctrine reworks for those three. The Imperial Fist one, I think specifically, Raven Guard is like passable, especially in a universe where we're fighting against greater demons and stuff. They get +1 to hit and win against those in Tactical. That's fine. Ultramarines is pretty garbage because generally speaking, you're going to be trying to build around moving and shooting. You don't need the Super Doctrine to make you move and shoot, or to make you count as stationary. And especially with a lot of Ultramarine lists built around Invictor warsuits, they don't suffer that penalty anyway, so it doesn't really matter if you count as remaining stationary. Just just change those effects, especially Imperial Fists, I think. As Imperial Fists are hilariously like anti-synergistic between their Super Doctrine and their Chapter Tactic, and they need something new. Give them, I don't know, they're just -1 damage now. Like, something silly, because the rest of that sub-faction is terrible. Just, it's so sad. 24% win rate, chat. It makes me sad in my soul, and I just want them to have a big shiny buff that makes that chapter less garbage to play. That's what I think about that. Oh my god. To confirm, you can only cast Smite once per cycle. You can now. Upon release, you could not. You could not do that. Let Devastator Doctrine progress a turn. I could see that for sure, chat. Yeah. You can. So like Tactical Doctrine, right, could be turn. You can hold in a turn on Tactical Doctrine. It is weird that you can't do that for Devastator. That would probably be a less abusable change, I think, for sure. So I really like that. Yeah. Magnum 32B. That's a good evolution of the thing that I said. Incursors are pretty good for their cost. Are they? Are Incursors good for their cost, or do Incursors forward deploy? Because if you gave any Space Marine player the option of taking Incursors or Eldar Rangers, they would take Rangers every time. Because they still forward deploy and they cost 50 points less. 50 points, chat. 50 points. 5-0. You could probably pay like 90 for Incursors and they would still be fine. But they're like 105 right now. Yeah, it'd be crazy. Just pick a Doctrine, but you can only use the Doctrine 2 times. Well, pickable Doctrines is like the Death Watch thing. You don't want to take their whole thing away. Space Marines would be more lore-friendly as a troop-focused faction. Conceptually, I like Space Marine infantry. I wish that normal intercessor squads did anything. The problem is that that's just not how 40k works. 40k is a game that is so weighted towards extremes of damage that like generic infantrymans are never high enough damage to see play. Because like if you have a troops option and you have an elite version of that troops option, the elite version usually gets better stats and better equipment and better special rules. So if you're trying to deal damage to your opponent, you would never take the troops option version. And that's essentially how Space Marines work, right? Like you could take an Assault Intercessor, but if you look at a Vanguard Veteran, they're better in every conceivable metric, except the fact that they're not in the troop slot. So you take the Assault Intercessor to fill the troop slot, and they sit on a backline objective all game instead of like charging someone. And I wish that Space Marines bucked that trend, but it sucks that there is such a precedence of like super overpowered. I'm not gonna say overpowered, but like super charged elite versions of Space Marine infantry that they have like such a legacy of these like elite options that their troops like can never fulfill that role. But I would love to see like intercessors just become a powerhouse, right? Like intercessors are just good in melee, good at shooting. We were talking about this on stream yesterday, actually. I wish bolt guns had a special rule associated with them. Like it's kind of like las guns, right? Like las weapons are now moving towards having gene rot might built in, because that's what swooping hawks do, and that's what Imperial Guardsmen do, and that mostly affects their las gun weapons. And I would like to see something similar for bolt guns. Like give them, I don't know, like rending or something. Like it's weird that they're just a regular gun. What's the difference between a bolt gun and a heavy stubber? There's not one. There isn't. Heavy stubber shoots 3 times. The bolt gun shoots 2 times. Like I don't know. Roll shock assault to +1 attack at the base profile. I think they will do that in the next incarnation of the Space Marine Codex. I don't think they'll make that change right now though. But I would foresee that coming for sure. That's what happened. That's what's happened in every other Space Marine release. Is that basically every other Astartes version has lost shock assault and gotten +1 attack. Better Phobos buffs? Yeah, I think honestly, I think it would be cool if Phobos And these are like really crunchy stat changes that I don't think we're gonna see in a Dataslate. But I think it would be cool if Phobos were like move 7, right? Because their whole thing is like, you know, move 7 or move 8 is even. Because that makes them better at moving out and performing actions and playing like actually a vanguard role over the standard intercessors. And then you just give intercessors like significantly better ranged attacks or something. I think that makes the interaction between the two unit types really interesting. But right now, Phobos are just the ones that you take. You'd never take a standard intercessor. For 5 less points than an incursor, the incursor gets forward deploy, and it's basically the same ranged attack. Like, okay. Hot take, let Imperial Fist get +1 to wound with bolter weapons? Done. Print it. Imperial Fists are +1 to wound with bolters. No exploding 6s anymore. Their bolt guns are just really broken. For sure. 100%. And then their stratagem to get exploding 6s on bolt weapons is actually sick. Instead of just being a weird way to get Tesla on your bolt guns. Flesh borers are better than the original heavy bolter. I mean, yeah, the original heavy bolter is better than a flesh borer now, though. It's not like every weapon in the game got a little bit better, I think, for the most part. Las rifles are better than bolt guns for sure. Yeah, like statistically, they do more damage. It's just pretty insane. Yeah. Animander in chat, how's it going? Yeah, give them better melee profiles. I could see that for sure. I don't know if like a tactical marine's like melee profile is a huge is hugely impactful. I would prefer right now to see I think tactical marines would be cool if they were just caddies for special weapons, right? If a tactical squad was like 75 points and got a multi-melta for free, like suddenly we're talking, right? Like we're gonna start playing tactical marines. You know, and that's the kind of buffs I think that Space Marines need to get them out of their sad time right now. So that's what I have to say about that, chat. That's we got through all of the factions that I wanted to talk about. I think, like I said before, all the other factions in the game are right in the middle. So I don't think that they need too many more. I don't think the factions are in that like between 45 and 55% win rate need too many, or at least 50% need too many changes. And honestly, I would rather see these factions that are in the low echelon get buffs. I could even see Death Guard getting some buffs as well. I think they were one of the other ones that were down there. Thousand Suns were down there, but they play so differently than they did previously now that I don't think they need too many changes. But I would like to see all those factions get buffs more than the top factions get nerfed, because I think that despite the fact that we talked a lot about the top factions getting toned down, I do think that the problem is more dire for Space Marines than it is for, Adeptus Sororitas scoring too highly or something like that. Yeah. Animator, don't let chat hear you say that Space Marines die too quickly with a 3+ save, because they've been complaining about Armor of Contempt all day. So I think that some people in chat would fight you over that for sure. I do think the problem with Space Marines resilience isn't necessarily their defensive stat line, in my opinion. It's the fact that they pay a premium for that defensive stat line, and it's nothing to like write home about, right? 2 wounds and a 3+ save with Armor of Contempt, so like effective, a situational 2+ save is fine. But the problem is that you pay like 20 points for that model, for that profile, whereas other factions would get that for 15. And that's the real issue. I think Space Marines would feel a lot better, would feel a lot more resilient if you got 25% more intercessors for the amount you spent on them. Yeah, there you go. Here comes folks out of chat complaining about Armor Contempt. There we are. Can we slide in Deathwatch bolters getting all the special issue ammunition back? I would love to see that, chat. As a Deathwatch stan, I would love to see that, but I think it would be that would be difficult to implement. I think Deathwatch just need a new book, honestly. When they were decent, when you could special issue ammo their entire army, and you got 3-shot, 60-shot, or 60-shot assault intercessor units getting 2+ poison, stuff like that. It was really cool. And I think their current version just doesn't work very well. But part of it might be that just like intercessors aren't that good. And if you made intercessors better, I think Deathwatch Infantry would be much. So I did play. I played 60 Tactical Marines on stream for a challenge. It was a little bit tough to get through the games. It felt very turn one oriented. Like if my opponent went first, it was very difficult to win. But if I went first, it was almost fine. But I do think like 60 Tactical Marines was better than I thought. I lost to Chaos Space Marines to an Emperor's Children list by 1 point, I think. And I had a lot of outs to get that 1 point, and the dice just didn't fall for me. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Tactical Marines, that list would probably be playable like in a big way if Tactical Marines were significantly cheaper. If you could take 60 Tacticals and a couple Smash characters. The other change I would like to see, speaking of Smash characters, chat, before we wrap things up here, the other change I would like to see, and this would be a change to Warzone Nephilim rather than the codex itself, would be free relics and World of Trades for Space Marine chapters. Because the problem is that Space Marines are constructed around their stratagems and constructed around their characters, and their characters all require relics and Warlord traits to operate correctly, and they don't get any special consideration for that. And I think if they got a free relic and a Warlord trait, so they got 2 CP more per game, I think they would feel a lot better. So that's what I have to say about that. How do I think the changes will affect the middle of the run factions? I don't think they would affect them too much. I mean, I think there's like a little bit of convection that happens, but I think the factions that don't get changed significantly will probably be, if anything, buffed. If the top echelon, like the only thing keeping a lot of like the 51, the 49 to 51% factions down are the oppressive factions like Tyranids and Necrons that have like really consistent game plans into them. And if you see those factions get nerfed to a lower win rate, I think all those factions that are right at that mid level get bumped up a little bit. So you probably see them increase in their win rates. We should just make an Adeptus Custodes. Yeah, I've already talked about Adeptus Custodes twice, chat. Roll back the video. I'm not going to talk about Adeptus Custodes for a third time. Man, the Adeptus Custodes community is so weird. When y'all lost like 3+ invulnerable saves, everybody got mad about it, and then your codex is like one of the most broken codexes released. And then it got nerfed, and everyone complained they were unplayable, and they're at above 50% win rate. They're not unplayable, they're just fine. Like, I don't know. Get good. They have bad matchups, and I can see it be frustrating because their matchup, like sometimes you hit matchups where you just die, but the faction isn't in need of major reworks right now. There are more Space Marine players suffering more greatly than there are Custodes players. All right, chat. I'm gonna go ahead and before we talk it for like a fifth time about Adeptus Custodes, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up. But thanks everyone for watching and hanging out with me on this Tactical Tuesday. I think it was a good discussion about some wish listing. Hopefully, we see this data slate come out within the next 2 days. That would be my hope. But, who knows? We'll see. If it does, I'll make a bunch of content about it. Otherwise, I played a ton of Darktide over on the Purple channel over the weekend. I'm putting VODs for individual games for that up on the replay channel at youtube.com/tacticaltortoisetv all week. I put a little bit of there's a little short I put on this channel earlier today. That was a little funny interaction that happened in that game. But Darktide was sick. Go check those out because I'm going to be posting a ton of gameplay from that. I played everyone but the Psyker, and we had some pretty sick games. Played with some people from the community, so it was super cool. Once that game gets released in total, I'm going to stream it a ton more, and I'm going to make a lot more content about it. I've decided, putting my foot down, I'm going to become a video game streamer, and I'm never going to touch Tabletop 40k again. I'm just kidding, but I am super excited for it to come out because the beta was actually super sick. So, cool. I will call it done. So I'll see everybody, and we will talk later. I'm going to be live on the Purple channel tomorrow evening. We have a pod final, so come hang out with me for that. And then I have Thursday, I think we're still scheduling something. Friday, midday, we have another pod final. So tons of pod finals happening this week, which is awesome. So link in that down in the description. Go give me a follow over there, and you can catch me live every weekday besides Tuesdays. And otherwise,